One of my favourite movies is Hackers from 1995. A lot of people will scoff at that and declare, the movie sucks, but those people are wrong and I feel bad for them. Everything about Hackers just oozes 90s cool. It was Johnny Lee Miller's first movie and a breakout role for Angelina Jolie, although fans of Cyborg 2 Glass Shadow would beg to differ. Matthew Lillard gave a screen-stealing performance as serial killer a full year before he would play an actual serial killer in Scream. Lawrence Mason is awesome as the charismatic Lord Nikon. I've been a fan of his since The Crow, and I think he's one of the most underrated actors working today, so of course I think he's great in this. Fisher Stevens as a joy is the movie's villain, and is one of my favourite "oh it's that guy" actors, but every time I talk about him I have to bring this up because what the actual fuck, Hollywood? The soundtrack is phenomenal, with tracks by Orbital, The Prodigy, Massive Attack and Machines of Loving Grace to name a few. The film is dripping with a super stylish cyberpunk aesthetic, from costume design to set design, specifically the supercomputer at the Ellingson Mineral Corporation and the Cyberdelia nightclub, complete with our heroes playing an arcade version of WipEout from the PS1. Interestingly, this version of WipEout was a pre-rendered mock-up created from an early demo of the game made specifically for this film and bears little resemblance to the finished title, but it's fun to bring up considering both the movie and the finished game released in the same month. So why am I talking about this cinematic masterpiece in a review for an indie RPG? Because honestly, all I could think about while playing Jack Move was the movie Hackers, and I mean that as a compliment. Jack Move is the debut title from indie developer So Romantic, a studio that began with a single programmer, Ed Paris, but has since grown into a 5-person endeavour. According to an interview in the July 2021 issue of Wireframe magazine, Paris began work on the game that would become Jack Move in 2012 as a hobby. He was working as a mobile game server engineer at Mediatonic at the time, but wanted to learn how to do all the cool fancy stuff, so he started working on a small prototype of a turn-based battle system, and after playing Jack Move, it's pretty safe to say he learned how to do the cool fancy stuff and then some. Jack Move is a hyper-stylish turn-based RPG set in a cyberpunk dystopia. You play as Noah Solaris, a hacker as skilled as she is sassy, with a design and personality based loosely on Angelina Jolie's character Kate from Hackers. See? That intro makes sense now, doesn't it?
It's like poetry, it's sort of they rhyme.
I'm also convinced she's based on Violet Berlin from the 90s UK video game show Bad Influence. I was hearing Berlin's voice in my head when reading Noah's dialogue, and it just fit too well to be a coincidence. Anyway. After a loved one is kidnapped by an evil corporation, Noah and her partner in crime Ryder become embroiled in some high-tech corporate espionage that gets very weird and very dark very quickly, and to say more would be creeping dangerously close to spoiler territory, and I don't want to do that. What I will say is I enjoyed the hell out of the story. It's cool, it's exciting, the pacing is great, there are some fantastic twists, and it only took me 5 hours to get through, so didn't drag anything out or outstay its welcome. If you're a fan of sci-fi, cyberpunk or corporate intrigue, this is a game for you. Gameplay wise, Jack Move is a turn-based RPG with one of the best battle systems I've experienced in a while. It doesn't do anything particularly original, it's essentially a rock paper scissors weakness system with a turn order mechanic similar to games like Final Fantasy X and Grandia, but it takes these borrowed ideas and forges them into something that feels instantly recognisable to RPG fans while also being incredibly easy to understand for newcomers. It's a pretty stripped down, no frills battle system, and to be honest, with how unnecessarily complicated some RPGs can get, I wholeheartedly welcome its simplicity. Noah's standard attack is called Hack. This is just your basic physical attack. It does increased damage to enemies weak to physical strikes, and does standard damage to everything else. And that's all there is to say on it. The meat of the battle system is based around software, which is essentially this game's version of magic. There are 3 types of offensive software: green cyberware, blue electroware, and purple wetware. Electroware is strong against wetware, cyberware is strong against electroware, and wetware is strong against cyberware. It's possible to acquire software and hardware that scans enemies to show their weaknesses, but for the most part, enemies are colour-coded. For example, if an enemy is fully coloured neon blue, it's safe to assume it's an electroware enemy, indicating it's weak against green cyberware attacks. And this colour coding is even true for bosses, letting you know their strengths and weaknesses at a glance. Using software costs data points, and the more powerful software you use, the more data points it uses. Meaning you can buy and equip powerful software early on, you just can't use it as often as weaker ones. Luckily, data and hit points are restored whenever Noah levels up, at vending machines dotted around the world, or by using items purchased from shops. I really like the software system. The rock paper scissors nature of it makes it super simple to understand, and the neon colours each is highlighted with make them easy to identify at a glance. And unlike other games with similar strength and weakness systems, you don't heal enemies when you, for example, use a wetware attack against an enemy strong to wetware, so you never feel like you're being punished for making a tactical error. There are also a bunch of software that can heal you, give you buffs or debuff your enemies, and using software during battle rewards experience points to the software used, which in time levels them up, making them more effective. So you're essentially rewarded for using magic with more powerful magic. Installing software takes up RAM blocks. At first, you're limited to just 3 blocks of RAM, but you can buy more from shops. This restriction is, in my opinion, not well optimized and ultimately pointless. It took me 1 hour of playtime to have enough money to buy both permanent RAM upgrades and unlock all 15 blocks. Stranger still, the shops selling the permanent upgrades also sold temporary upgrades. I don't know if this was by design or if it was a genuine balancing mistake, but by having the permanent RAM upgrades available in under an hour of playtime, it renders the temp upgrades pointless and allowed me to become very powerful, arguably too quickly. Personally, I think it would have been better to not have temp upgrades at all, and then spread the permanent upgrades over a couple of shops, allowing for steadier character growth. Or just have all spaces available from the beginning of the game, as they're unlocked so quickly they may as well have been. Don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it. It just made me feel like I'd accidentally unlocked the easy mode for a while. New software can be bought from shops, and there is a lot to choose from in the form of both attacks and buffs, so there's a lot of freedom in how you can approach your loadout. Software can also be switched out during battle using the command install, which is a genuinely brilliant addition. It costs a turn to use, so there's some strategy involved, and to be honest, I didn't use it for the longest time as my setup of 3 attack types and a healing software saw me through. And then I got to the final area, and I am so glad this option exists, because if it didn't, I would have struggled, as there is a noticeable difficulty spike, and enemies frequently use status ailments and debuffs which I was not equipped for. Whenever Noah attacks an enemy with hack or software, or takes damage herself, her JM meter fills. Once this is full, she can pull off the titular jack move. These are super powerful special attacks that hit all enemies on screen. Once activated, a mini rhythm game begins where you need to press 3 direction buttons in a sequence in time to the beat. The more inputs you get, the more damage you do, and getting a perfect will hit with maximum damage. I love the jack moves. They're an absolute spectacle to look at, and the damage they dish out is so satisfying. My only complaint, and this is a dumb one, I wish there were more inputs in each sequence. Maybe each time a jack move levels up, a couple new inputs are added to the sequence, leading to a more powerful attack. Something like that. As I said, it's a silly complaint. I was just enjoying myself with the inputs and wanted more out of this minigame. Other actions Noah can take in battle are Patch, to use items, and Cash, which causes her to defend for a turn, decreasing damage received and giving her an extra turn later on, and I found myself using it all the time. The inclusion of the extra turn adds an element of risk-reward to combat, and it genuinely helped me get an advantage during more difficult fights when an extra turn made all the difference between life and death. With the exception of boss battles and a couple of scripted events, enemy encounters are random. These take place in special encounter zones, which are indicated by the appearance of the threat level indicator, which fills up over a short amount of time and will trigger an encounter shortly after filling. I love this system. When I was younger, I used to love random encounters in RPGs, but as I've gotten older, they've become an inconvenience and an annoyance. But here, with this indicator, I know when a fight is about to happen, so it doesn't come as a surprise when it triggers, and for some reason, just knowing when I'm about to start a battle is enough to stop me being annoyed with it. And what's even better is the encounter rate is completely adjustable. You can choose between base, which is the default, hype, which increases the encounter rate, slashed, which reduces it, and null, which turns it off completely. I genuinely love this. Feeling underleveled and want to grind a little? Switch to hype and get it done quicker. In an area with a puzzle you're trying to work out? Switch to null and solve it uninterrupted. Just having the option to explore an area without being stopped every few steps is genuinely wonderful. It's a brilliant system, and I wish more RPGs would do something similar. Winning fights rewards Noah with experience points, allowing her to level up. Leveling up increases her hit points and data, as well as her base stats. The base stats highlight the one and only real issue I have with the game, and that's its use of made up future slang. For example, toughness and guts are okay terms to use for attack and defense stats, but what the hell is grok meant to be? I'm assuming it's data attack, but come on, grok. There are other examples too, littered throughout the dialogue, and it is cringy in a way that reminds me of that old cartoon reboot from the 90s. Honestly, I know it's a weird complaint and it isn't exclusive to this game, fake slang just rubs me the wrong way. In fact, real modern slang winds me up. Like, what the hell does clutch mean? What is poggers? Why don't kids talk properly anymore? The way turn order is determined in Jack Move is great, and as previously mentioned, borrows heavily from Final Fantasy X. In the top right of the screen, there's a timeline showing the next 8 turns, with each portrait representing a turn. By seeing this, it's possible to manipulate the turn order and grant yourself extra turns by defeating the next enemy in line, or by using cash to plant an extra turn for yourself later on. It adds an element of strategy missing from a lot of RPGs, and against a particular enemy early on, it can be used to create an exploit for speedy level grinding. It isn't as deep a system as FF10 or Grandia, but it's a welcome addition all the same. I love it when games add a little something like this. Noah can also improve herself by installing hardware modules. These are equipable buffs and include things like attack and defense increases, counter attack, first strike, things like that. These can be purchased from shops or found in treasure chests dotted throughout the world. At first, Noah can only equip one hardware module, but this can increase to a total of 3 once certain items have been purchased. But just like the RAM upgrades, these can be bought within the first hour, making the restriction seem utterly pointless to me. Certain hardware modules are only available to buy and equip once Noah reaches a certain level, like the Linkman module at level 20, which makes software hit all targets at once and is awesome. All in all, the combat is excellent. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it takes its influences, wears them on its sleeve, and uses them to create a battle system that is fast-paced, engaging, and most importantly, fun. Outside of combat, the design of the world of Jack Move feels deliberate and polished to a sheen. It's quite linear, which is totally fine by me as it creates a more focused experience and keeps the story moving along at a great pace. There are treasure chests to find, NPCs to talk to, and data pads to discover that drip feed information about the world, its characters, and the events that unfolded to get us here. It's a well thought out world that keeps you moving forward, but rewards curious players with lore and items if they choose to look. Talking about the visuals feels a bit pointless. You're watching the video, you can see for yourself how objectively beautiful this game is. Everything from the stylized sprite work of Noah and the NPCs, to the over-the-top bosses and incredibly stylish battle arenas, to the incredibly detailed environments, which I'd learned are all modelled in 3D and then made to look 2D with a forced perspective trick using an orthographic camera. And I don't know what that means, but I feel clever saying it. The soundtrack by Charlie Feber is incredible and sounds like something you'd find on a Fabric Live CD from the early 2000s. To put it simply, Jack Move is an amazing game and one of the best I've played this year. If you love RPGs but don't have time to commit to a 50+ hour adventure, then this is the perfect game for you. Everything from the world building, the characters, the visuals and the music is simply a joy to behold, and it plays like an absolute dream. I honestly can't praise it enough, and I highly recommend it to fans of the genre. So that's Jack Move. Have you played it? If you have, let me know what you thought of it in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you're new and want to see more. And if you didn't like the video, leave a dislike. It tells the algorithm you're watching and engaging, which only helps the channel grow. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.